Hi YouTube, Timothy Unkert here, and welcome to my HTML tutorial. We're going to start off by downloading a code editor to write our HTML code in. And one free one that is very popular is VS Code. So let's open up a browser and we'll just search for VS Code. And we see we have Visual Studio Code. I'm actually going to go to the website, which is code.visualstudio.com. And I'm using Windows for this tutorial, so I'm going to just download for Windows. This is a free code editor provided by Microsoft. So I'm going to click download. I'm going to then open the file. I'm going to accept the user agreement, click next, next, keep all these the same, next. This one I'm going to add a few things. So I'm going to add open the code, create a desktop icon. You can choose whether to select those or not. I'll click next and then install. Okay, I'm going to leave Launch Visual Studio Code checked and click Finish. I also like to use this app a fair amount, so I'm going to pin it to the taskbar here. And this is Visual Studio Code. I can click here to maximize it. You can run through the Get Started setup, or you can just mark done. I'm going to mark done, and go here from the startup page and open a folder. So let's do that. Let's open a folder. I'm going to go to my desktop and just create a new folder, and I'm going to call that HTML-tutorial. You could call yours whatever you like. And I'm going to select that folder. Okay, it's going to ask you if you trust the authors of the folder. I'm going to say yes, I trust the authors. I'm going to close this. And here I'm going to add one extension that we're going to use just to preview our HTML code in the browser. And if I type in live, and see this first extension that comes up is live server. This is by Rick Day. I'm going to click install. And now that it's installed, we can close that out. We can go back here. And in HTML tutorial, if I click on this, you see these little icons. One is to create a new file, one is to create a new folder. Let's just create a new file and call it index. And then we have to have the file extension .html. Okay. And don't worry about this right yet, but I'm going to create some HTML boilerplate code. You can do it with me as well by just doing the exclamation point and hitting tab, and Emmet will expand that. And if you want to get your screen a little bit larger, you could do Control Plus. I'm going to do that twice just because I'm recording and I want you guys to see what I'm recording. And then we can do Control B to close the sidebar. Another thing I like with VS Code here is you can do File and go down to Autosave, and it'll automatically save your file as we go. Now, in between the title tags here, so this opening title tag and the closing title tag, I'm just going to give this the title HTML tutorial. Now to check everything is working with our live server extension, let's just type this is a test, and I'm going to go down here and click go live. Okay, and we see here this is a test. Now I'm a bit zoomed in. If you want to see this a little bit better, you can zoom in. I'm zoomed in to 200%, but we now see that our live server extension is working. Okay, so now that the live server extension is working, we're going to go back to VS Code and let's get rid of this. And the first thing I want to talk about is headings in HTML. So headings, like many HTML tags, have an opening and a closing tag. And there are 6 different levels of heading, with the H1 being the most important level heading and the H6 being the least important. So let's start with our H1. So to do that, I'm going to do a left arrow bracket. That is the key above the period on your keyboard. So you're going to do shift and the comma key, and we'll type H1, and then I'm going to do a right arrow bracket, which is the shift period. And you'll notice that VS Code creates, when I close the opening tag, the H1 tag, the closing tag closes for me, and my cursor is placed in between the opening and closing tag. All right, so I'm going to write this is a heading, and let's write this is a first level heading. Okay, and if I go back to my browser here, you'll see that it's a little bit bolded, a little bit larger than the paragraph. And that's the default styling. You shouldn't pick the level of heading based off of the default styling. You'll style it later in CSS. The level heading that you pick is based off the structure of the document. Okay, a subheading of an H1 is an H2, and that we create the same way except with H2 in between the opening and closing tag. By the way, I should point out with the closing tag, the difference here is you have a little slash and then the name of the tag after it. In between the tags, I'm going to type that this is a second level heading and is a subheading of an H1. Okay. To create a third level heading, one VS Code shortcut that's really helpful is Control Enter. If I do that, Control Enter again, I move down to the next line. Then I'm going to do an H3. This is a third level heading, and it is a subheading of an H2. Okay, let's do Control Enter, move down, we'll create an H4. This is a fourth level heading, and it is a subheading of an H3. Control Enter, let's do an H5. This is a fifth level heading, and it is a subheading of an H4. And then there's one more, Control Enter, and we'll do H6. This is a sixth level heading, and it is a subheading of an H5. Okay, so now if we go back to our browser here, we'll see the different sizes for each of the headings. The font by default is in bold, but again, that can be changed in the CSS. You want to generally structure your document with one first level heading, a few second level headings, and then maybe a few third level headings that are subheadings in those second level headings. Again, these are for structure. The reason why there are 6 of them is originally HTML was created to share scientific documents across the web, and there was a lot of structure that was needed in the document. Typically, when I create a blog or something like that, I might go to H4. A lot of times I just do H1, H2, and H3. Again, it depends on the structure of your particular document. Okay, one other thing I want to show you is I can go here, and if I do Control/, that creates a comment in VS Code. And you'll see the comment is the left arrow here, exclamation point, 2 dashes, and then we have whatever the comment is, then 2 dashes and a right arrow bracket. And you notice that VS Code, the default theme, puts it kind of in this light greenish color. It colors it a little bit differently. So I can write whatever I want in the comment. It's not going to show up in the browser. It's more for myself to understand the code and other developers to understand the code. So I could say the following section is a demonstration of headings. Okay, and then if I go back here, you'll see again it doesn't appear. One thing you can do to see the source code is Control U, and you'll see the source code here, and that'll open up in a separate tab, and you'll see the heading here, and you also see this comment. This is with the Live Server plugin. It says code injected by Live Server, and there's a bunch of code, but you don't have to worry about that right now. I'm going to close that out. Just wanted to show you comments before we got too far into the tutorial. And now let's talk about paragraphs. So let's go down here. We'll do Control, and this is the question mark key, the slash under the question mark. So Control question mark, and that gives us the comment. And I'm going to say this next section is a demonstration of paragraphs. Now, you'll notice when I started this tutorial, let's do Control Enter to get down to the next line. When I started this tutorial, I said this is a test, and I didn't wrap it with any tags. So let's try and write 2 paragraphs. Let's write this is paragraph 1, and this is paragraph 2. And let's see how this renders in the browser. So if I go back up here, I see this is paragraph 1, and this is paragraph 2. And while we're doing this, let me show you one other trick with VS Code. If I highlight this with my mouse and then do Control and the question mark key, the Control/, it comments it all out, and then I can just focus on my code here on the current section I'm on. So let's do that as we go along so you can keep the code, and but then just focus on what you're focusing on the HTML. So this is paragraph 1, this is paragraph 2. Notice they're all jammed together. And the reason is we have to wrap these with paragraph tags. Now, a quick way to edit code like this is if I hold down the Alt key, this works on Windows, and I click here, and then I do Shift and Home, it's going to highlight both of these. And now with VS Code, we have a cool thing where I can do Control-Shift-P, and I can type wrap, and then you see this Emmet wrap with abbreviation. I'm going to wrap it with, and I'm just going to type P. This is the Emmet abbreviation for a paragraph. Hit enter, and you'll see that it wraps these text in the opening and closing tags. Now if I go back, I see they're on separate lines. That's because paragraphs are block level elements, right? So if I didn't wrap it with a tag, it jams it all together. But now I'm wrapping it with a paragraph tag. It's telling the browser that the text in between the opening and closing P tag is a paragraph. It's a block level element, meaning it will span all the way across. And one way you can demonstrate that, I'm going to show you a little bit of CSS code. But let's go into this first paragraph here, and I'm going to do a space and type style equals, and then let's do background dash color, and let's do light blue. Okay. Now if I go back, I see the light blue is all the way across the screen. That's because it's a block level element in HTML. And let's do the second paragraph as well. We'll do a different color. So paragraph style equals, let's do background color, and let's do, and you'll see VS Code gives me a bunch of colors to select. Let's do brown. Okay. So we'll select brown, and we see this is paragraph 2, also a block level element. So that's paragraphs in HTML. Okay, so now that we've covered paragraphs, let's highlight this, and we'll do Control/ to comment it out. And we'll go down here, and we'll make a comment that we're going to do lists. So we'll do lists, Control Enter to move down to the next line, and I'll do Control/, and we'll use the most common list, in my opinion, which is the unordered list. Use that a lot for navigation menus and various other things in HTML. So I'm going to go down here, and to create a unordered list, what I can do is do a UL tag. So I'm going to do a UL tag, and then inside the opening UL and closing UL tag, so UL stands for unordered list. In between those, we have list items. So we're going to do list items. So I'm going to do list item 1. I'll do Control Enter. List item 2. Control Enter. Create another tag. List item 3. Now let's go back to the browser, and we can see by default that the unordered list has bullet points for each of the list items. This is the default styling the browser gives the unordered list. Again, this can be changed in CSS. Aside from unordered lists, there are also ordered lists. So let's do one of those. Let's make a comment here. We're going to do ordered list. I'm going to click Remind Me Later. You may see this pop up. Got a moment to help the VS Code team? Please tell us about your experience with VS Code so far. Sometimes that comes up. We just installed it, so that came up again. Okay, so anyways, the ordered list here, we're going to do Control Enter, and if you guessed that the ordered list tag was an OL tag, you were correct. So we're going to do OL, and let's do 3 list items again. So we'll do list item 1, Control Enter, list item 2, Control Enter to move down to the next line, list item 3, and now let's compare these list items. And you'll see the ordered list items have numbering by default. Again, this can be changed. Now there's another type of list called the definition list in HTML, but honestly for websites I haven't used that. So this tutorial is going to cover the things you most likely are going to use in HTML. If you're really interested in it, you can look up definition list HTML, and you'll find a bunch of resources on that. Okay, with lists, you could also have nested lists. This is sometimes used, so nested lists. And let's nest an unordered list within another unordered list. So we're going to do a UL tag to open, and we'll do list item 1, and then we'll do a list item 2, and we'll do a list item 3, and let's nest a list within the list item 3. Now I see some tutorials out there and they make this mistake. They go here after list item 3, do another UL tag, and then do, nested list item. Technically this is incorrect. You should have the unordered list here inside of the list item if you're going to nest a list within a list. Okay, so I'm going to go here and just hit enter, and now we're going to do a nested list. So this will be nested list item 1, and I'll do control enter, and then we'll do nested list item 2. Okay, and let's check those out. And you see here by default the first nesting you have an open circle here. Again, this can all be changed in CSS. If you want to go nest multiple levels, we could do another unordered list, and let's do let's call this super nested list item 1. Okay, and then we see it moves to the square there. You can also, with nested lists, what you can do is you could nest, say, an ordered list within an unordered list, or an unordered list within an ordered list. Doesn't really matter. Let's nest an ordered list here. So this will be ordered nested list item 1. And then we'll do another one, ordered nested list item 2. Okay. And we see that we've nested an ordered list within our unordered list. You can play around with this a bit, but that's pretty much what you need to know for lists in HTML. Okay, let's move now to anchor tags. And before we do that, though, let's just clean up the code a little bit. So we have a space here. Now, if I do Control-Shift-K, that's going to get rid of that empty line. And what I'm going to do is just comment some of the stuff out. I'm going to highlight the stuff from the opening unordered list to the closing unordered list, but not highlight the actual comments. Sometimes within VS Code, if you highlight that, make a comment, run a comment, it kind of throws things off. So I'm just going to do Control/ to comment that out. Let's highlight this one, Control/, and then let's highlight this one and Control/. Okay, and now let's check out our browser. We have nothing. We have a clean blank slate. So we're going to move into anchor tags now. So let's go down here and make a comment. And this is linking between documents that we're going to do. So let's link between documents. Okay. And to do that, let's open up the sidebar here and go to this file icon. And let's create an about.html page. Okay. And on our about.html page, I'm going to do the exclamation point and hit a tab just to get some boilerplate code. We'll talk about that later in this tutorial. I'm going to name this the about page, and down here I'm just going to create a paragraph, and I can do a shortcut with Emmet. I can type P and hit tab, and that's going to give me the opening and closing tag. So a little tip there, and we'll say this is the about page. Okay, we'll go back to the index.html, and we'll make a paragraph here and say this is the home page. Okay, and to link between documents, typically we have a navigation menu. You can create a navigation menu in HTML by using a nav tag, and then inside the nav tag having an unordered list. So I'm just going to type nav and hit tab. And again, Emmet is going to autocomplete those tags for me. Nice feature. Okay, now I'm going to create my unordered list. And to do that, I'll do UL and hit tab. And I'm going to have some list items. Now, if I typed go to about page, and I went to my browser here, and I try and click on this, nothing's going to happen because we actually have to have an anchor tag to link between pages. So instead, I'm going to delete this stuff, type A and hit tab, and this is going to give me the anchor tag. And here we have this href, which stands for hypertext reference. And if you hover over this in VS Code, it gives you some information about it. But what I want to do is put the link to the about.html page. Now, since the about.html page is within the same folder as the index.html page, we can use a relative link. If we're linking to another website, we would have to use an absolute link. And I'll show you that in a moment. But I'm going to do control space, and it's going to give me the other files within the folder that I can choose from. So that's control space in VS Code. I'm going to hit enter to select about.html, and now I'm going to say go to about page. Okay, and if I do that and I click on it, you'll see this is the about page. On our about page, let's create a navigation menu back to go back to the home page. So let's do a nav menu and hit tab, and inside of that we'll do an unordered list, hit tab, and we'll do a list item and an anchor tag, control space. We're going to pick index.html, and then we're going to say go to homepage. Okay, so now if I go back, I see go to homepage, click on that, and it says this is the homepage, and we can navigate between documents on our website. Now, if I want on my homepage, say an absolute link to, say, Google, I can do that with an anchor tag as well. So I'm going to do a list item and then an anchor tag. And this time I'm going to type out the full web address. So I have to type https://google.com. And I'll just say go to Google. Okay. If I go back to my browser, I see go to Google, and I click on it, and you see it brings me to Google. I can hit the back button here to go back to my site. Now, you'll notice here that it opened up Google in the same tab. There is an attribute with anchor tags that we can use, so it opens it in a separate tab, and that is the target attribute. So I'm going to type target, and you'll see VS Code gives us some choices here. I'm going to select target, and it also gives us some values that we can put in here, and we want underscore blank. That's going to open in a separate tab. Okay, so now if I go and click on this, it opens up Google in a separate tab, and my website stays open in my own tab. So if you're navigating, if you have a link to a separate site, you do want to keep you do want to use the target equals underscore blank attribute, so that people will keep your website open and thus spend more time on your website. Okay, so that's a little bit about anchor tags. Another thing you can use anchor tags to do is to navigate within a particular page on your website. So let's demonstrate that. And let's go here, and I'm going to do Control B to close out the sidebar, and then Control Enter, and let's do a list item, an anchor tag, and I'm going to do a hashtag and type bottom. And I'll just say go to the bottom of the page. Now, this isn't going to do anything right yet. We're going to have to create a div with an ID of bottom, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So what I'm going to do now is just create some paragraphs, and one thing you can do within VS Code is type lorem and then the number of words you want. Let's make a really long paragraph. Lorem 500, hit tab, and I can also do Alt-Z, and that'll do word wrap for me. So you can see this is a huge paragraph here. Let's do a couple of those. So I'm going to do P, tab, and then type lorem 500, tab. Okay, let's do Control Enter, move down to the next line, P, tab, lorem 500, hit tab. Okay, now down here, what I'm going to do is create a div, and I'm going to give it an ID equal to what was after the hashtag, so bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to, within the div, let's do a paragraph and just say this is the bottom of the page. Okay, so now if I go back to my page here, you see that it's really long here, right? And we could scroll all the way to the bottom, or now we can click on this and go to the bottom of the page. We also might want navigation to go to the top of the page. Okay, so let's make a navigation menu here. and we'll have an unordered list. Inside of that, we'll have a list item with an anchor tag. And let's go to, we'll do hashtag top, which we'll have to create a div for the top of the page. And we'll say go to the top of the page. Okay. Now, if I go up to the top of my document here, and we'll start here. I don't know, we can start. Technically, all this stuff is commented out, so it's not really in the code, but I'm going to create a div with an ID equal to top and then close that out. And we'll just make a paragraph. This is the top of the page. Okay. Now, if I go here, I go all the way to the bottom. I click on this. It's going to bring me back to the top of the page. Go to the bottom, go to the top, etc. Now, as you get more experienced as a developer, you can use JavaScript and various other things to slow, like JavaScript CSS, to slow the scroll down, which is an effect that a lot of people use on websites. Anyways, so I think that's a good coverage of anchor tags. All right, at this point in the tutorial, it's time to talk about images. Now, we've got a lot of content here. I think we'll just need to comment all this stuff out. Okay, and let's go back to our browser. Oh, we got the top of the page. We got to comment that out. So let's just get rid of this stuff. Okay, and we are clear. Okay, so image tag is interesting. I'm going to make a comment. We're talking about images now. Control Enter to go down. Now, an image tag is interesting. If I type img, hit tab, you see I have a source attribute and an alt attribute. The alt attribute, let's hover over it. This attribute defines an alternative text description of the image. It's important for screen readers and accessibility. Okay. Now the source is the actual path to the image. Okay. So let's go get an image. And to do that, there's a bunch of sites that you can go to. Let's go to pexels.com is my favorite. And let's search for an image of a kitty. So it's signing me in. All right, I'm going to type kitty and see what it gives me. Oh, this kitty's very cute. So let's click this, and I'm going to download the small version. So I'll download that selected size, and I'm going to need to move that from my downloads folder. So here's the file. Let's rename this file to kitty, so it's something that's more human friendly for a name. So I'll do kitty, let's do kitty1. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that, go to my desktop, go to the HTML tutorial. And what I want to do is actually I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call that images. And I am going to paste the kitty1 image in there. Now, if I go back to VS Code and I want to get this image, I'm going to do Control Space, and I'm going to select the images folder, and then I'm going to select kitty1.jpg. Okay. All right, so we want to give some alternative text for screen readers. So I'm going to say something like a picture of a cute kitty. Okay, and now if we go back to the preview, we see here's the picture. Again, I'm zoomed in 200%, so it's a little bit larger than the actual picture. But we haven't done anything with styling to resize the picture. There are some deprecated attributes. Now, when I say deprecated, that means that you really shouldn't use them anymore. But just for the purposes of this tutorial, we'll change the width and the height of this image. So let's do width equals, and we're going to do a width in pixels. Let's bring it down to 300. Now, if I do that, it'll automatically resize the cat. Now, remember, this is double the size of 300 pixels. If I were to zoom into regular size, this would be the regular size. Okay, let's zoom out. So you'll notice here that the height is automatically resized with the width. Now we could specify our own height, but we run into some issues when we do that. So if we do height, let's say equals 300, and then we look at the image, it's not sized proportionally anymore because we forced it to be a width and a height of 300 for a picture that was not square to start. Now, if I want the height to be 300 and the width to be sized automatically, what I can do is just get rid of the width attribute here. And now if I go back, now it has a height of 300 pixels and the width is resized appropriately. Okay. Again, these are deprecated attributes, but you can use them still. You're just not supposed to. You want to do your sizing more in CSS. But since we don't, well, you don't know CSS yet, we can stick with these attributes. Okay. Now, sometimes in HTML, you will also see that the image is wrapped in a figure. So I'm going to do a figure tag. So I'm going to type figure and hit tab. And I'm going to do the image, hit tab, control space, go select my images folder, select kitty1.jpg. We'll say a picture of a cute kitty. Okay. If I go back to my browser, putting it in the figure, you'll see it styles it a little bit within the browser, so it's centered it a little bit. Let's zoom to 100% here. It's the default size of the image. Okay. Now let's actually comment out this top line. So I'm just going to go to the end here and do control and the slash. Now with figures, the cool thing is I could put a fig caption. So I could do fig caption, hit tab, and then give some text in between the opening and closing fig caption tags. And you notice again, the image is a self-closing tag, so it doesn't have a closing tag here. So in between the opening and closing fig caption tag, I'm going to say a picture of a kitty, and we'll do from, and then I'm going to do an anchor tag. So I'm going to type A and hit tab, and we'll do https://pexels.com, and we'll do target equals _ blank, and we'll say from Pexels. So we'll provide a link within the fig caption there to give credit to the photo. And ideally, we'd probably want to give the credit to the actual address here. So we could copy this and paste this in. I'm not going to do that right now, but if I click on this, it'll go to just the Pexels page. But that's how you do a fig caption. Now, sometimes, or a lot of time, you want to have images for your website within like a relative folder. Sometimes you may want to do an image from somewhere on the web. So another place to get free images is Wikimedia Commons. Okay, and go here. Let's search for maybe the HTML logo. Okay, and we've got the logo here. And we can click on more details here. And there's a license here. Describes how you can use the image. If I want to use this file on the web, I'm going to do the file URL. So I'm just going to copy this and I can go here. Let's do another figure and we'll do an image and we'll just paste in the address there. I'm going to do some word wrap. So Alt-Z for the word wrap. And then the alt text will be the HTML logo. Okay, so now if I do this, and go back here, you'll see that I have the HTML logo. Let's maybe change the width to 300 pixels. Okay, so now it's much smaller. And we could do a fig caption. And what we could do is do the attribution here. So it has the basically all the stuff we need to plug in for the attribution. So I'm just going to copy this and then I'll paste that in. I think we'll be good to go. Let's just take a look. So okay, so we actually have to make this a link. So I'm going to do href equals, and then we'll close that out. We'll do a target equals _ blank. Okay, so now we've got our fig caption. Let's comment out the kitty here for a moment. So we'll comment that out. And if we go back to the live preview, and the kitty did not comment out all the way. Not sure why. Okay, there we go. I just had to refresh it. It was a little bit of a quirk, but we see we have our fig caption here and then via Wikimedia Commons. and this gives the license details for the image. So that's something you can do with fig captions in images. I think that's covers it for images for the most part. One other thing we can do actually while we're here is we could do a title attribute. So I could do title equals, and let's just do HTML logo. And if I go back here, and now if I hover, you'll see that there's a little pop-up that says HTML logo. So that is one other thing you can add with images. That covers it for this part of the tutorial, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so now I want to talk about tables in HTML. So I'm going to comment out this figure. So I'm going to highlight it and do Control/. Then I'm going to go down to this line and make a comment, just tables in HTML. And I'll do Control-Enter to move down to the next line. Now to create a table, we're going to have an opening and closing table tag, and a table will have table rows. So we create a table row with a TR tag, and we have table headings within those table rows. Those are TH tags. So let's make a table that takes in the name, the age, and the weight of an individual. So that's going to be our top table row. And if we look at this by default, we've got the bold for the table headings. Now let's create another table row here. And now we'll have table cells, which are TD tags. And let's do Tim. Let's do an age of 47. And let's do a weight of 200. Okay. And we'll do one other person. Let's do another table row, another table cell. Let's do Ben. Let's give him an age of 38. And let's give him a weight of 180. Okay, so now if I take a look at this, this is how the table looks by default. If you want to style this, it's recommended that you style it with CSS, but since you don't know CSS right yet, I'm going to show you some deprecated attributes in HTML. And you'll see for this first one, border, that VS Code actually puts it in red. And if I hover over it, see if it will give me anything. Now, it's not giving me anything right now, but really you shouldn't be using this. I'm also going to do cell padding, another one you really shouldn't be using at this point. But just to show you, to format it a little bit nicer, and I'm going to do cell spacing. Let's do 0. Okay, so if I do that, now we have some padding around the cells. We have the border, but each cell has a spacing in between the next cell of 0. That's why they're all tight like that. If I changed my cell spacing to say 5 pixels, when here you'd see that there's now some spacing. So you could style the table that way, although you should be doing it mostly in CSS at this point. A few other things with tables. I'm going to highlight this and do Control-Shift-P, and do Emmet, wrap with abbreviation. I'm going to do T-head for table head. So this helps to organize your table a little bit better. You're not really going to see a difference here, but it lets the browser know a little bit more about your table. I'm going to highlight this, do Control-Shift-P, and do T-body. No, first I want to wrap with Emmet, and then do T-body. Okay. And then we could have a T-foot tag as well. Now, if I put that this table is data on names, ages, and weights, you'll see the default formatting is a little odd when I do that. That shows up on top, even though it's the table footer. We can change that though. First, I'm going to wrap this with a table row, and then go down here, and go down here, and let's wrap this now with a table cell, so a TD tag. Okay, and I want to give the table cell a col span equal to 3 because there's 3 columns. So when I do that, now you'll see that the footer appears at the bottom of the table, which is formatted a lot nicer. Now, in addition to col span, you can also do row span. So let's say we had 2 Dans, right? And we didn't want to type Dan twice. So I'm going to do a table row here. I'm going to do a table cell with a row span equal to 2. And we'll have Dan. And the first Dan will have an age of 34 and a weight of 150. And then I'm going to go down and create another table row below. So let's create another table row. This time I'm only going to have 2 table cells, so this Dan will be 42, and he'll have a weight of 211. Okay, and so now you'll see that the Dan, where I use the row span, it spans 2 rows. Okay, so we could represent 2 DANs on our table. So that's all you really need to know about tables for HTML. Okay, now that we've talked about tables in HTML, let's talk about forms. So first off, let me just highlight all this stuff here and just comment it out. And we'll make a comment below that we're going to talk about forms in HTML. All right, so to create a form in HTML, we are going to use the form tag. And you'll see here that VS Code, when I use Emmet to create the form tag, it gives an attribute of action, and that's the page that's going to act upon the form. Typically, this is a page in PHP or some other back-end language. For right now, all I'm going to do is put a hashtag there. So this form isn't going to actually submit. I'm just showing you the structure of the form. Okay, and a lot of times you'll have a method, which is either get or post. Post is more secure, so we're going to use post. Okay, and we can, within a form, we can have a field set. So I can do a field set here, and I can do a label, and you have this attribute for, which that's going to match the ID of the input. So I'm going to do an input and have a type of text, and I'm going to give it an ID of name. Another thing you might see a lot in HTML is an actual name attribute. So we could have name equals name. And that's something that will allow you to handle it with PHP on the back end. But we want to match the IDs, whatever the value of the ID is, with the for here. Okay, so I'm going to say for name, and I'll give the label of enter your name. Okay, and so we can go here and I'm going to refresh this. May need to restart it. We need to restart live server here. And we see enter your name, and that's the field set. And we can have a legend within the field set. Let's do a legend and do your name, something like that. Okay, so you see that that could be one way we could do a form. Another way we can do, instead of using the field set, is to use a div. So let's do that. So I'm going to create a div here, and I'm going to have a label for an email. So I'm going to say enter your email, okay? And then I'll have an input, and input type will be email. Now I'm going to use Emmet to create this. So I do input : email, I hit tab, and it gives me the type is email, the name I'm going to call it email, and now I have to match the ID with the label. I'm going to type email, okay? So now it will accept only inputs of the type email with, you have to have like the @ symbol and that kind of thing. So you can see here, if I click on this, it will focus because I have the label, enter your email, and the ID matches this input. If I click on this, it goes here. If I click on this one, it puts the focus here. So that does help with accessibility, okay? We can have other input types as well. Let's create another div here. Let's do a label, and we'll do it for a password, which is also a type. So we can say enter your password, and we can have an input and do a colon here. And I'm going to start to type password and just select this and hit enter. We'll have the name and the ID match. A lot of times that's the way we would do it. So now if I go here and I click on this and focus on the password and I start to type, you'll see that you have the letters bulleted out, okay? And I can even click here and show you what I'm typing, just like a regular password form. So that's pretty cool. Okay, we could also have a number input. So let's do that. Let's create a div. We'll have a label, and we're going to call this age. So I'll say enter your age, and we'll do an input of number, and we'll give it the name age and the ID age. Now if I go to this one here, I click on enter your age, and you can see the up arrows here to select an age. You can of course do negative. That doesn't really make much sense, but you could restrict it to a number in case you're wanting to get data like age or something like that. Okay, so that's another one we can use. We could also do like checkboxes. So um, you could do, and actually let me show you where some good resources for this are. So if I open up a new tab, they do MDN forms. This is the Mozilla Developer Network, and we can look at web forms here. And so we can start to search for different things, form styling guides, validation, all kinds of stuff you can reference here. If I wanted to look up radio, I could do radio HTML MDN, and I might want to look this up because I don't use radio buttons a ton, but let's show you how we do it. So we'd have each of these would be a div inside of a field set. So let's create a field set first. Okay, and we'll give a legend of favorite, let's do favorite ice cream flavors. Okay, and then I go down here and let's create a div. And then within the div, let's look at we're going to have an input and we can have a label below it. So let's do an input with the type of radio, and the name will be mint. Let's do mint dash chocolate, and we'll give it an ID of mint dash chocolate. Okay. And then we can do the label for mint chocolate. So mint, let's do mint chocolate chip is one. And let's create another div here. And we'll do another input of the type radio. And this time it'll be, let's do strawberry. And we'll give it an ID of strawberry. And we'll do a label for strawberry and say strawberry flavor. Okay, so now if we go here and go to our live preview, we have favorite ice cream flavors, and we can check both or one. Okay, so radio, you can check both or one. Now, they also have checkboxes. So if we go back here, let's close out some of these tabs. What we could do is select, and we could do checkbox HTML MDN. So look at that. And we can go here and we see we might have it in the field set. And again, we have a div with the type of checkbox. So let's actually change this up a bit. And instead of radio, I'm going to actually, let me do the Alt key. And so we're going to do checkbox. Okay. And so now if we look at our live preview, we've got more of a default square box. And you can check and uncheck with the checkbox there. So a little bit different than the radio button, but also another thing that you can use. Okay. We could also do a select. So let's do select HTML MDN. We search that, and we see the select element. So we'll have a select with a name, an ID, a label above, and then we're going to have values. Okay, so let's create one of those. All right, so I'm going to go down here and we'll create a label. We'll call it label for pets. We'll say something like, pick your favorite type of pet. Okay, and then we'll do a select. The name will be pets. The ID will be pets. Okay, and we'll have some options. Okay, the value will be cat. We'll do another option. Value is dog. And we'll do maybe a third option of parrot, maybe. Okay, and now if we pull this up, go to our tutorial, we can now select from these. So I could select dog, or I could select parrot, or I could go select cat. So that's select, and that's forms in HTML. Okay, now that we talked about forms, I want to talk about semantic elements in HTML5. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to comment up a form. So Control slash, comment that out. And let's talk about semantic elements in HTML. Okay, and these are HTML5 elements here. Um, so one thing that we have, and one that you've seen already, is the nav menu. So the nav tag is a semantic element. But you can also have a header, right? And within your header, you might have a nav. If you remember, we usually have an unordered list in the nav with list items. And inside the list items, we have anchor tags that go to various spots. Now, if I just want to build this out, I can put a hashtag here just to kind of build out the structure of a page. Let's do a home. And another thing I can do is I can do li and then this right arrow A, and if I hit tab, then it nests the anchor tag in the list item tag. So that's a little Emmet shortcut for you. I'm going to type about. I'm going to do Control Enter to get down to the next line, and do one more. Let's do contact. Okay, so this is how you might build a navigation menu in HTML. Now it's not styled very nicely, but that is how you would lay out the structure. Okay. After a header, you might have a main element. And within your main element, you might have an article. And you might have a title to your article, like article title. So it's going to be something a little different than that. And then your article might have sections. And let's say I wanted to create 3 sections. One Emmet shortcut I could do is I could do section asterisk 3, hit tab. That's going to create 3 different sections. And each section would have maybe an H3. So this is the section title. And after that, you might have some paragraphs with some text. Let's give it 200 words here. And I'll do Alt-Z for the word wrap. Okay, so you might have that. Let's create a few more here. Let's do second section title here. Let's have a paragraph. Let's say I only have 100 words in this paragraph. And we might have multiple paragraphs, but this is just for demonstration purposes. And then we'd have a third section title here. And let's do 150 words in this one. Okay. So now if we look at our page, we've got an article title, section titles, and instead of using divs, which is kind of the generic, we can use sections to denote that we have different sections. Now, sections don't have to be in articles. Articles could be in a section, for instance, or you might not even have article. All right. Below the main, you might have an aside. Now, this is not the main content of the page, but might be something else that's important, maybe about the author, right? You might have an about the author section. Now, when you style this, you might have this on the right sidebar. Since we're not doing CSS yet, it's just going to appear below, but you can do that. And let's just do 50 words here. Okay, so you're not going to necessarily see anything different unless you style it, but you can use the aside, for instance, as a sidebar. Below the aside, you probably have a footer. And in your footer, you might have your copyright information. And you could do the copyright symbol with the ampersand copy and a semicolon. And we could do 2024 there. And if we go down to the bottom, we see copyright 2024 in our footer. And that is pretty much what I wanted to talk about with semantic elements. Again, you can look up on MDN if you want to get into some more of them. But yeah, that's semantic elements in HTML. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is HTML boilerplate. So what I'm first going to do is shut down the live server here. And I'm going to go here and just create another file. Let's call it contact.html. Now, what we've been doing is using Emmet to create that boilerplate for us by using the exclamation point and hitting a tab, and that gives us some of the boilerplate. But let's actually break down what some of this stuff is, okay? So the first thing we have is the Doctype, and we have a left arrow bracket exclamation point doctype space and HTML, and then a right arrow bracket. Now this tells the browser that this is an HTML5 doctype. If you want to look up some of the older doctypes, they were more complicated, for instance, for HTML4 and so on. But nowadays, we use HTML5, so you have this doctype declaration at the top of your document. After that, you're going to have closing and opening HTML tags. Now, one thing you want with the opening HTML tag for accessibility purposes is the language. So I'm going to do it in English, but you do want that. That's a thing that helps with accessibility and letting screen readers know more about the language of the document. Inside the HTML tags, we have two separate sections. The first one is the head of the document, and depending on what style you use, you might see no indentation, or you might see it indentated like that. The indentation does help humans read the code. So the head of the document has meta information. For instance, when we created a new page with Emmet, you have this character set, which is UTF-8. So let's type that. So we're going to create a meta character set equals UTF-8. And what that helps to do is it helps the browser render special symbols. So for instance, in the last part of the tutorial, we talked about the copyright symbol. Right? There's other special symbols that you can use in HTML, and you can look those up, but they won't render properly, at least some of them, if you don't have the right character set. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is the viewport. So we'll have meta name equals viewport, and we're going to say content equals width equals device dash width initial dash scale equals 1.0. Okay, so that means whatever device that you're on, it's going to size it appropriately based off the screen that you're using. So this helps with mobile optimization, makes it look a little bit better. Below that, we have a title tag, and that's going to appear actually in the tab of the document. So we'll do contact page here, but you might have contact and then something like whatever the name of your site is, name of your site.com or something like that. But let's just do contact page, and I'm going to click go live here. And you'll see right here that the title appears in the browser tab. None of the other meta information appears on the page. That's the stuff that we're going to create in the body. Okay, so the head has this stuff, and then we have the body. Okay, and then within the body, this stuff appears on the page. Okay, so now if I go back, we'll see that the stuff in the body is actually on the page. The head tells the browser what the page is about, gives important metadata for search engines and so on. Okay, and one other thing let's talk about here that Emmet doesn't create, but that you should add for SEO purposes is a meta description. So I can do meta name equals description, and then I can do a content, and maybe within 160 characters or less, I can say whatever the page is about. So this describes the page. Okay, and so you should add that for SEO purposes. But that's HTML boilerplate. I think at this point you're pretty well set to go. I haven't covered every single thing in HTML. You could spend years looking at every single thing, but I think you have enough stuff to start creating web pages with HTML. Hopefully you liked this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.